Hello Excells, it's Remy here. So I will be discussing on the gear that I am currently using for the League Start Insider that I am currently testing out. So first of all, I'll start off with the one. So for the one, you want to look for an eye level 68 Hunter inbuilt one with the allying damage to attacks per 10 intelligence, and then ideally you want to have an open suffix with increased critical strike chance craft on that. If you are able to look for an attack speed, do look for one, because this build lacks the speed for attack speed. As you can see, the build is pretty slow at the moment, so any attack speed on the one would pretty much help. So for the next one is a shield. So for the shield, I went with an intelligence, all rest and resistance and energy shield, which is pretty mediocre in general. If you are able to look for an adversary reflection, do go for it. And for the helmet, I went with Crown of Ice. Crown of Ice is very good for early settings because it gives you attack, leech as mana, and the increase and reductions to spell damage also applies to attacks. So this essentially allows us to skip 2 passive points on our passive tree because we don't have to allocate the mana leech and also the increase and reduction to spell damage on our passive tree. So essentially we save 2 points on having this helmet on. And for next one is Incandescent Heart. Incandescent Heart is one of the best chess piece for Insiders because it is one of the best, and because of the elemental damage taken as chaos, essentially we have 25% more energy shield against elemental damage. And it could even rival Mirror Tier chess piece, so let me show you on PoE. So I grabbed 2 chess piece on the TFT with the Forbidden Trove. So first of all, I grabbed one of the Mirror Tier chess piece, which is this Direct Cloak, and one of the other ones, which is this Agony Skin. So in the PoE, I'm currently using an Incandescent Heart with increased damage. So I allocate Point Blank just in case, because I have allocated Point Blank on this Incandescent Heart as a Scourge, but it is not very important. But anyway, so if I directly swap to either of these chess pieces, as you can see, I actually lost DPS instead. But I will start off with this frenzy charge. So assuming we don't have frenzy charges, assuming that Incandescent Heart doesn't have any frenzy charges, so do remember this DPS. So it is about 27 mil. So if I swap out to this Direct Cloak, as you can see, I only get about like 2 million DPS. For one piece, this should be about a 50% increased damage. Incandescent Heart should be about 3 to 5x depending on the league. It might go over to 10 or 20x, but as you could see, you basically just gained about like 2 million DPS. If you even have a frenzy charge, you just lost DPS instead. So you could basically say that Incandescent Heart actually beats this kind of Mirror Tier chess piece. You are essentially paying for like a 140 XP, as you can see, a 140 XP and 1 mirror, as compared to something like an increased damage Incandescent Heart. And how about the defenses? So please remember, it is 61 and 174. So if I swap back to Incandescent Heart, as you can see, it is currently 59 and 170. So the difference is very, very minimal for something that you spend about like a quarter, not even quarter of the cost, and you basically have more energy shield and more defenses. And yeah, so I don't recommend going for something like a percentage intelligence chess piece. So if you even look for a double percentage, something like this, you even lost DPS because you are unable to get frenzy charges, as you can see. It is a lot less DPS as compared to something like this Direct Cloak. So don't look for any percentage intelligent chess. It is basically a bait. If anyone recommend you to go for like a real chess piece on outside of Incandescent Heart, don't trust them. They have no idea what they're talking about. Alright, now moving on. For the boots, we went for Syntrack. Syntrack is a T3 unique, which it is not very difficult to obtain on League Start. So on League Start, I remember it is around 10 to 20 chaos. It also depends on the popularity of the build. So yeah, this boost gives us a lot of intelligence because the energy shield and evasion. So if we grab if you grab this mastery point, it gives us a lot of energy shield. So I highly recommend you look for something like a Syntrack because it gives us a lot of ES. And for the globes, we just went for intelligence and resistance. That's pretty much it. And for the belt, so the Oxygen belt is actually a tier 2 unique, which might be a little bit more difficult to get as compared to all other uniques used on this build. So an Oxygen belt usually costs for about like 20 chaos or 30 chaos, I believe, on League start. So it might be a little bit more difficult to obtain on a good Oxygen belt. Ideally, you want to the max roll, increase elemental damage attacks. You can obviously catalyst this up with the Tribullion Catalyst, I believe, it increases the elemental damage modifiers. So Oxygen belt gives us almost the same damage as a percentage intelligence belt. So let me show you on PoE. So I have 80% intelligence belt and something like this. If I use Oxygen belt, and you can see right here, if I just swap this one over, you could see my DPS is pretty much stays pretty much the same. So Oxygen belt is one of the best belt you could use on Instacker because it also gives us energy shield. Shield effect and freeze duration are based on your energy shield. This is also pretty good because you are unlikely to get freeze if you have Oxygen belt. I am not using any shield avoidance or any shield immunity. I rarely get shield or frozen at all. I don't even have any freeze immunity on my Flask. I do occasionally get frozen, but that is only when I'm opening strongbox or when my cold resistance is extremely low, but I'm very unlikely to get freeze, so Crystal Belt Oxygen is pretty good. And for the rings, they are pretty much the same, which is the intelligence, life, energy shield and resistance. This is also the same. Do take note of the strength because we are severely lacking in strength. We must have at least 99 strength to at least able to equip Incandescent Heart, as you can see. So because I'm lacking in strength, I have to grab one of these right here. So if you do have enough strength, you just have to grab this intelligence right here. And for the last one is our talisman. So for the talisman, you have to look for the Vengeance Cascade Anoint. This allows us to skip us paying the oils required for anointing Vengeance Cascade. So Vengeance Cascade on early league might be a little bit expensive. It also depends on how popular Vengeance Cascade Anoint is on league start. So I'm unable to predict the price on this, but I bought this for about like 30 chaos. But assuming that they will be expensive, so as long as the talisman has good stats, it should be always worth getting over some. It should be always worth getting a talisman over anointing Vengeance Cascade, as long as the cost of the amulet is not higher than the oil. And if the talisman do happen to be higher than the Vengeance Cascade, you can just look for something like Astramentis instead. And for the Flask, I went with Sorrow of the Divine because of Sell-off's off. So if you aren't able to get Sorrow of the Divine, you just look for a normal Sulfur Flask and that's it. And Three Promise might be a little bit expensive for League Start. I remember it should be about like 5 chaos to 10 chaos. It also depends down on the roll. You just have to look for a max roll elemental damage if possible, but this is a minimum roll I'm currently using. And we are using a Quicksilver Flask because the build is very lacking of speed. So we are also going to use Onslaught Flask because ours lacking on speed, and then a Quartz Flask for basically facing, and that's pretty much it. And for the gems, you just copy and paste this on PoE. It has nothing much, but if you're a console player, I could just show you a quick pick. So for the weapons, I'm using Discipline, Precision, and Divergent Frost Shield. But Divergent Frost Shield is not mandatory. You can just look for a normal Frost Shield. And for the helmet, it is Arcanist Brand, Faster Casting, Elemental Weakness, and Flame Wall. So, and the shield, Flame Dash, Sigil Power, and Steel Skin. The gloves, Kinetic Blast. The lightning penetration is actually not mandatory. You can just look for a normal lightning penetration. Inspiration support and Awaken Fork. And for the power siphon, we went for power siphon, an increased critical damage, lightning damage, inspiration, and barrage. And for the boots, it's pretty much Divergent Hydro Spear, Spellslinger, Cypress Mark, and Onslaught. So on clear, I would recommend you to swap out elemental weakness with divergent hydrosphere, because if you are an occultist, because this is an occultist, when you are unable to get any curse on hit, so you just look for spell slinger curse hex right here, so you could trigger your profane bloom pops right there. So you only really need to swap on bosses that move a lot like Hunter, because you could also just proc the hydrosphere up on bosses with your arcane sprint anyway. And that's pretty much it for the gear. So now for the passive tree, it looks something like this. For the jewels, I just went with spell damage, attack speed, strength int, and if possible, you have to look for the elemental resistance. That also works. If you do have enough mana, because right now currently I don't have enough mana rolls, so I went with this mana node right here. But if you do have enough mana rolls, I recommend going for this instead of this. And for next one is the fertile mine. Fertile mine allows us to swap everything right here into intelligence. So I think it should be about like 40 to 60 intelligence just from allocating fertile mine on this spot. And for the console players that are unable to look for the PoE, or any Apple users or Mac OS users that are unable to use PoE, so here are the masteries that I'm currently using. So this is effect of marks, and this is exposure effect. The energy shield per 8 evasion, 1% spell damage per 60 intelligence, 80% increased critical strike chance against shock enemies, 25% critical strike multiplier against uniques, 1 attack for additional projectiles, and intelligence is added to accuracy with wands, plus 5 intelligence per allocated mastery passive skills, and discipline has 25% mana reservation efficiency. So this is a level 93 occultist. So if you are other ascendancy, I do believe that Occultist and Scion are the best, but I still believe that Scion performs well and performs better than any other ascendancy. But this is just a testing of mine that I'm currently testing on Occultist and see how well she performs on the endgame. So one of the core issues of this build is the league start scalability. So because of the limited scalings available for you on early levels on league start, I don't recommend you to league start this build right away with 0 gear at all. This project of mine is just to test out the minimum investment required to start off this build without having the instacker to be completely trash. So anyway, I only recommend you to league start this as a spell slinger, especially Eye of Winter, because Eye of Winter has similar items that you need on instacker, for example Sniper Smart and Spell Slinger. And yeah, the second core issue of this build is the inability to do invitations, especially invitations that has a lot of dots. Yeah, this build couldn't do because of the low maneuverability due to the low attack speed. So I don't recommend you to do invitations if you do plan on league starting on this build. So you have to buy carries if necessary in order to complete the uncharted rounds. And the third core issue of this build is the low survivability. Even though I have about a high energy shield pool, occasionally you could still get one-shotted by physical hits because this build has low physical mitigation. So I only, if you are someone that hates to die a lot, don't league start as this build, because this build is not very tanky. You could die from some fist raw charges or some fist dots that would easily just murder you away. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope this video could give you some inspirations and give you some guidance on how you could league start on an instacker. But obviously don't league start this build if you have zero clue on what you are doing. This is not a guide intended for newer players. This is just a guide intended for experienced players. But anyway, hope you all enjoyed this video and see you guys next time. Have a good one, Exiles.